What's up, narrators? This is Mo, and I am here for very much a surprise, unplanned vlog today. As some of you know, maybe some of you don't know, I have had the fortune of being a Chicago Bulls fan for most of my life, and I've talked about the Chicago Bulls really through a lot of different iterations of the Nearest Per Possession podcast, and I've had the fortune of two great guests for Chicago Bulls specific episodes, which I will plug. Please go and check out the two episodes I've had with Drew Stevens of the Bigs and also Will Gottlieb of CHGO Sports. I mentioned those names and I mentioned Chicago Bulls today because the Bulls did really something that they don't do a lot of, to be frank. And that is they fired their front office leadership today. They fired Arturas Karnisovas and Marc Eversley today. I am recording this on the evening of April 6th, 2026. Front office has been fired, and I've been a proponent of that move for many seasons, well before I ever created Nearest Per Possession. But the gravity of that move today, I feel compelled to get on the mic for a little bit and just talk about a retrospective or a rationalization of what this era of Chicago Bulls basketball has been. Um, in the grand scheme of things, in the entire sort of tenure of, what affectionately is known by a lot of people as the AKME regime, the AKME era of the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls as a franchise went a total of 224 wins and 254 losses in the 6 seasons of this front office regime. Mediocre is like an understatement from my own personal opinion, and I'm sure the opinion of a lot of Bulls fans of what it was like having this front office run the franchise, which at the very beginning of their tenure had a lot of hope and a lot of promise and a lot of optimism given where the previous regime, front office regime of John Paxson and Gar Forman, it really sort of worn out their welcome, to be frank. Um, when I think about the sort of the defining themes of this Acme era Chicago Bulls, there are many that people would probably choose from. These are mine, and this is just where I'm going to think about this period Chicago Bulls history forever. It starts without a doubt. Unfortunately, you have to look at the 35 games of Lonzo Ball's original health, where it was a surprising upstart performance by the Bulls. At one point, they were the number one team in the Eastern Conference in the 21-22 season. Let me get my facts straight on that. Yeah, 21-22 season. Bulls end up finishing that season 46-36 and get a gentleman's sweep in the first round of the NBA playoffs against the Milwaukee Bucks. That is really perhaps the apex of the Acme regime, is the fact that they had such an surprising start to the season, but also you could argue at this point like the warning signs were there already for that front office in their inability to really course correct or have a plan B, plan C, anything after Lonzo Ball suffered a season-ending injury that really debilitated him for multiple seasons, right? I think about the Lonzo situation, 35 games, what if there are 3 seasons of no trades whatsoever in a trade deadline, off season. Just like the front office literally went MIA on trades for 3 seasons. Pretty crazy. I feel that for the most part, I've tried to lay off this point, but it feels like it needs to be reiterated again, sort of in this again retrospective of Acme. But for my taste, trading Alex Caruso straight up for Josh Giddey will go down as one of the worst trades, I think, in Chicago Bulls history. People will say the Vooch trade. I can understand that given the draft capital. But I think a lot of people have sorely, for many seasons now, especially Bulls fans, have sorely underappreciated the actual on-court impact that Alex Caruso delivers because defense is not as easily quantifiable as offense, unfortunately, in basketball. And his impact was immediately proven valid by being a key contributor to the Oklahoma City Thunder winning the NBA championship the following season after that offseason trade where Caruso goes to OKC and the Bulls bring back Josh Giddey. Maybe Josh Giddey becomes something of an all-star caliber player one day. I'm probably famously not all that high on Josh Giddey's prospects as a Chicago Bull or what he can do. A lot of questions there really going into this offseason and really for his foreseeable future because my point of view, AKME seemed to have found their face of the franchise when they acquired Josh Giddey. And when we think about roster moves as well, another, I think, theme that will stick with me with this front office is really just, something I tweeted, I believe, earlier this season. Just an obsession with acquiring raw wings who stay raw. And I can rattle those names off the top of my head. I mean, drafting Dalen Terry with a first round draft pick, even though, late first round pick, maybe that's inconsequential, but if you were to look at the list of names there and really impact that could have been created, I surely would have appreciated the Bulls going a different route than Dalen Terry, who is currently a two-way player and may not even be in the league next season. That was, again, first round pick just kind of burned there. And then doubling down with that same sort of archetype to trade, if I remember correctly, trade second round picks and feels like it didn't matter as much back then, but we see more and more with each sort of transaction period, second round picks, they're gaining weight because teams don't really want to move first round picks anymore. Trading two first round picks for Julian Phillips, who may turn out to be maybe a decent rotational level player, or he may just be a replacement level player or less, frankly. We can also go all the way back to the very beginnings of AKME, and they go and get a Troy Brown Jr., who they just let walk in restricted free agency, and I think that's a statement, right? Like maybe it's a flyer they're taking, but to go and trade for a guy where you don't even tender him a qualifying offer, it just speaks a lot to sort of like the front office's obsession with these toolsy wings that don't shoot, that don't really do much. Isaac Curl is probably at the top of my list in the moment of that kind of player. And then I think you could also just round it out with a call this like, well, I'm up to number 5A and 5B. It's 0 playoff series wins in their entire tenure, at the same time being like completely deeply smugly satisfied with playing games. That will never sit well with me. I don't think you can be a franchise that has 6 NBA championship banners hanging in your arena, and you're just like, yeah, we're going to fight and claw every season for a 39-win season and the 10th seed. It disrespects what should be a top tier legacy in the NBA. So those are some of the things I just sort of rationalizing or retrospecting on what will be, I think, just a sad period of Chicago Bulls history. And with all that, I would be remiss if I didn't really round this out with not so much just harping on AKME as much as in the grand scheme of things, when Bulls fans or any NBA fans think about this period of Chicago Bulls, I believe it's important to really, this is something where blame needs to be put, and I believe the blame really belongs on the Reinsdorf ownership group at this point, because not only did they hire Arturas Karnisovas, kind of mangling his name, and Marc Eversley, the general manager, they hired these two. Well, they hired AK, and then they hire, AK hires Eversley. They hired these guys and then extended them secretly because there's never been like a public Bulls announcement about extending these guys, not once but twice. And so we got 6 seasons of this, largely because the Reinsdorfs thought these were the right people to handle their basketball operations. And when I think about the future of the Bulls, I don't have any confidence that this firing has really turned the fortunes of the franchise, or there's hope still, because the Reinsdorfs are still owning the Bulls. And as long as they own this franchise, I have no reason to believe that anything different would change about the franchise becoming relevant again, or being you know, a meaningful NBA franchise in the Eastern Conference. We've seen it now through really three front office regimes in the 21st century. Sad results with Jerry Krause after the dynasty. Um, John Paxson, to his credit, cleaned up a good amount of Jerry Krause's sort of miscues towards the end of his front office tenure. But then at the same time, Pax probably topped out with being able to draft Derrick Rose. Credit obviously for really an under the radar draft selection in Jimmy Butler, but after that, what did they really accomplish? Some good perhaps margin signings that at least keep the Bulls in the playoffs for a few seasons after the Eastern Conference appearance in 2011. But the Bulls have just been a aimless, rudderless franchise really since they've traded Jimmy Butler. And I blame that squarely on the ownership of the franchise. They don't seem to be aiming for any real basketball objectives. I'll shout out, outlet I wrote for last season on Tap Sports. I wrote for Bulls on Tap. There's a piece I wrote on the Rationalizing and really their origin story of their fortune. And I would plug that piece, and I'll probably drop a link to it in the show notes. The Bulls are not really a NBA franchise in a legitimate sense. I view them as an organization that simply just wants to continue to offer a sports entertainment product and keep the United Center field. So I just thought I'd rattle off some thoughts about what is somewhat of a historical day in this franchise, and frankly, historical for all the wrong reasons. It's a sad day somewhat because you've just witnessed 6 seasons of Bulls basketball that really, again, is largely meaningless in the entire history of the franchise. And you can only hope that things get better, but I would just say, I'm not going to be convinced that anything's different about the Bulls until they have a new ownership group. Just be blunt about it. So that's all I got about the Bulls. I will probably want to get get another Bulls Corner type of episode going. So be on the lookout for that. Please continue to like and subscribe. All the great content we have on YouTube. And thank you for rocking with Narratives Per Possession, where we connect you to better basketball narratives.